All right, we're here with episode 8 of SWADEcast, where we are going to talk about new players, new GMs, new everything.
New people.
Is it SWADE? I am SWADE! The whole thing is SWADE! I can't have this...
All right, yeah, so we didn't do like a clever intro or anything. We're just like, hey, this is the episode number and everything before the intro. But before we get in, first of all, it's been a long-ass time since we had a SWADEcast, like over a month.
Yeah.
Somebody couldn't record every time I tried. Plus, I've been crazy busy. But speaking of that, we can start with what have you been up to?
SWADified up our sci-fi game that we were playing last year and picked that back up. So
nice.
We've only had like our first, it's like our session 02 because SWADE.
SWADE!
So that was fun. We almost had a brand new character die in the first fight. But yeah, otherwise, good times.
How was converting over to SWADE? Because I don't think you'd convert any other...
I did Deadlands. Deadlands
was did you?
fine. But for this, it was a little trickier because when we started the campaign in Deluxe, I gave all the characters what were essentially core skills before that was a SWADE thing. Because I was like, okay, you guys are like military officers. You should be a little higher level than like a normal character. So I originally gave them, I think, a 3d4 in fighting, shooting, maybe. I told them they could pick 2 skills that were like important for like their job, like what they were trained in. So like for Kimmy's character, it was healing and investigation, I think, because she's a doctor. But yeah, so it was a little annoying trying to figure out the math because I was like, okay, I gave you, and a free d4 gambling. Because everyone's like, well, they're in the military. You have to have gambling. Didn't you ever watch Battlestar Galactica? That's all they do. I'm like, okay, you can have a free D4 gambling because nobody will ever use it anyway. But, yeah, the conversion wasn't too bad. The one character was a little rough because she was a sniper and psionicist.
Ooh. And
so there were so many changes to how the powers work. And she also wasn't particularly thrilled with how marksman works now. So...
We're staying positive.
Oh, well, this isn't me complaining.
I know.
But so there's a little hemming and hawing at the table, but in the end, it wasn't a big deal. We figured out the math. Sci-fi companion, or the last parsec SWADE conversion, which is just sci-fi companion, gives everyone a free electronics as a core skill now.
Oh, really? I missed that. That's cool.
So... that was cool. I mean, overall, it went pretty well. I assume there's going to be 1 or 2 issues that we missed last session that will come up in the next couple sessions, but we'll figure it out as we go, and it should be fine. And then tonight, I have an off-night ETU game because I won't be able to run my ETU game for like the next month or so, just based on people's schedules. And we ended on like kind of a cliffhanger when everyone got sucked into a video game. And
you were telling me about that.
Yeah, so for the people who aren't you, basically, long story short, there was this VR arcade that opened up in Pine Box, but the kids were going in, and there's the whole when you die in the game, you die in real life kind of thing. What it actually was is when you die in the game, they take your soul. So like physically, the people are still walking around and they're okay, but they're basically mindless zombies.
That's a nice twist. I was about to be like, oh my god, what a twist, Mike. No one's ever thought of that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that episode of Angel with the casino, where it's that, basically. Like it takes away people's souls for like some necromancer. I'm actually going to tie it into, I've been building up towards the Blackguard stuff.
Okay.
And I've been running that dude as like a behind-the-scenes villain necromancer guy. He's also one of the character's psychologists, but the character doesn't know that.
Nice.
So that's probably going to get revealed tonight. But yeah, he funded this arcade thing. It's not actually his arcade. But anyway, They went to investigate. They figured out the only way to like put a stop to this was to go into the games themselves. So I had them all like, VR up, and then I pulled out Zadmar's fantasy archetypes that he released a few weeks ago and just threw those character sheets on the table and told them all to pick their characters. And so everyone's playing like a fantasy hero in this new game. So we got through it's going to be 5 levels. We played the first level, which was the tutorial. And so I made them do just like stupid stuff like kill goblins and like here's how you go through a trap, and the players thought it was funny and annoying.
Did you like teach them how to jump, how to turn left?
There was a few things where they were just like, okay, that was funny the first 3 times. Can we just keep moving? And like they went into the room with the goblins. They had to get like 3 special keys to open the door to the second level. And each key was like, okay, this is the combat section. This is the figuring out movement section. And the other one was like traps and stuff. But I also ran it as a combat, a dramatic task, and a quick encounter.
Nice.
Like one for each. So the second level will be in a fantasy village where all the souls of the people are, which hopefully they'll figure out pretty quickly. Because they know some of the people who've been victimized, and they have to track down the one person in the village who doesn't belong. That'll be level 2. Then they'll move on to level 3, which is like a very typical dungeon crawl. I did a Don John random dungeon, and they're going to do that. Level 4 will be the boss fight, and after they beat the boss, which is like a big dragon, obviously, they will be ejected from the game because the dude who runs it doesn't want them getting to the last level. That boss isn't actually the last level. So either the players will figure that out and have to go back into the game to get to like level 5, the secret end boss, or they won't, and a bunch of the college students will be trapped soulless forever. So
now I have a big question for you. A, are they fighting an actual dragon with the dragon stats?
yes.
And B, are you using the different ranks in that?
Every level, they get a rank up. So level 2 is their season, level 3 their veteran, etc.
Yeah. That sounds like an awesome way to do it. And then they're going to be like, I'm legendary in a fantasy setting. And then get booted out. And they're back in
college students again. But I'm hoping from like a meta. So I don't mind if people get a little meta with it because it's a meta concept to begin with. They have stats for up to legendary rank, but they'll be getting booted out of the game at heroic. So somebody is going to be like, the one character is in the game club at school. That's like a huge video game nerd. And so I'm hoping that he's going to be like, no, this isn't right. There's still one more level to the game. And
my stats obviously can keep going up.
yeah, I have not hit max level yet. We need to go grind it out.
So did you convert ETU over with the official conversion now that it's out?
Yeah, my players were real annoyed.
Really?
Well, because they were only annoyed because, A, most of them don't really keep up with what's going on in the greater Savage Worlds community. So I'm like, okay, guys, SWADE's out. This is how I'm going to convert things, because it was before the ETU thing was put out. So we like figured it out. And mostly everything's the same. I don't think they did too much different except for the ritualism occult thing. So I had 2 players who were very happy about that.
Yeah.
But they've just been annoyed because throughout the releases of SWADE, like, okay, here's SWADE 2.5 or whatever, let's do this. And then I'm like, guys, they've like changed SWADE like 5 times since last time. We're going to have to go through all the characters again. And they're just like...
But I also asked because my twice-a-month ETU game, I haven't run since the update because it's the first and last Saturday of the month. And starting in July, I got another ETU game. I'm going to be running weekly, and that's going to be the first one I'm going to get to start with the official conversion.
Yeah.
Because I think you mostly like ran how to do majors close to what they were doing.
Pretty much, yeah. I did it different. Use the academic skill. And now they're like, you can use any of the knowledge skills if it makes sense.
I think the biggest one for me is how I did. I also did the... just do academics for your tests. I was like, academics isn't applied knowledge. It's academic knowledge.
Right.
Because the thing I was going off of is in original ETU, Deluxe Edition ETU, you could have major pre-med, but you didn't use that to heal people.
Right.
You still had to have the healing skill. So I'm like, that mentality sticks for all of them.
Right.
So you can major in something with electronics, but it doesn't give you the electronics skill.
Yeah.
Now they're like, boom. I think with the new, first of all, with the new rules, you can actually take healing as your major.
Yeah.
And I feel like every group's going to have a pre-med student. Yeah. I already had almost every group have a pre-med student, but now it's like my major is my class or my role in the party and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finally getting to actually have a sit down with and Preston stuff, this concept of heroic horror. Because I don't know if you remember seeing that. Like, that's what the genre actually is supposed to be. Heroic horror. It's a horror visage, but the good guys always win.
Right.
And once you do that, the new rules actually feel closer to the genre they talk to me about.
Right.
I feel like it reflects what they wanted better.
Yeah.
For the second draft.
Yeah. Whereas the original, it's a little more horror and a little less heroic.
Yeah. It's not like survival horror, but it's more horror.
Yeah. A big reason that I wanted to encourage everyone to just lean into like the regular knowledge skills was because I feel like they're overlooked so often by players too, especially by players who don't play the game a lot.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, fighting has a very tangible result. Healing has a very tangible result. Whereas like science, it's like, what do I do with science? I'm like, well, you got to kind of figure out what you're going to do with science.
Yeah. And again, this isn't knocking it, but it's one of those of, and I actually have been a big proponent on the Facebook group when Eric was asking about this of Savage Worlds isn't built for crafting.
Right.
And skills like science are, especially how they do it, are typically crafting skills.
Yeah.
And without that meat to hang science on, it still has its uses, but it definitely falls behind other skills.
Yeah.
It's like if you can use science to like whip up chemicals and synthesize things in a sci-fi setting, all of a sudden science is really good. But no, that's weird science, even if it's real stuff.
Yeah, I'm a little looser with it at my games, just because I want them to feel like I don't want any skills to feel useless except gambling.
Now, I don't know how much of this is going to get cut because we're already a half hour in.
We can talk though, and we're staying positive.
We are staying positive, and I want to be positive.
Yeah.
But that brings it to the other thing. Part of the reason I've been so busy, my recording schedule couldn't be like, oh, let's do different days and stuff like that, is we have the Kickstarter out, which, okay, yeah, it might influence a little of why we pick the topic of new players, but it's important anyways. But if you haven't heard about it for some reason, we are doing a Kickstarter called Savage Worlds for Beginners, which isn't a book. For some reason, some people were like, it said for beginners, it's a starter set. I don't know if you saw that on Facebook. One person that was like, it said for beginners, and everybody was like, you didn't even read the full title. Because like the title, once I launched it, was a video series.
Yeah.
But we have the Kickstarter Savage Worlds for Beginners, which is going to hopefully be a 15 or maybe more episode video series of us, me and Mike. Mike's going to be coming down. We're going to be shooting at my place and shooting on location, hopefully, of us doing higher quality videos for teaching people the basics of Savage Worlds and even some of the intricate stuff. Because we're going to go like a chase episode, a social conflicts episode, all of that kind of stuff. I don't know. We got puppets.
Yeah.
Mike got us puppets.
We sure do.
I don't know how good those puppets are, but we'll make them work if we don't hit the puppet goal.
They're fine.
Muppets are expensive, dude.
Yeah.
They are. And I don't care what Eric says about, no, just do cheap ones. I've seen what those look like on camera. No, dude. That sounds funnier than it is. Not when you got to commit to like 15 hours, or not 15 hours, but like 8 hours of content.
Hours of puppets.
Puppets!
Oh.
But moving into the topic at hand, along with that, Savage Worlds for Beginners, blah, 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 new players, new GMs, new blood into the hobby.
New Blood, that's a good name for the video.
Oh, no, it needs to be Savage Worlds New Bloodlines, and we'll get all the people looking for footage of the Vampire Masquerade Bloodlines game.
Yeah.
They'll be pissed, but we'll get the clicks.
Yeah. I have a friend who's trying to sucker me into playing a vampire game. I've never played it before, so we'll see if it actually happens or not.
All right, well, new blood for Savage Worlds, because this is SWADEcast. We got to talk about Savage Worlds. What? We had a whole episode dedicated to D&D, and hey, we didn't get lynched for it. Should we talk about the importance of new players first, or importance of new GMs? I'm thinking new players, because you bring in the players, then you make GMs.
Right. Everyone starts somewhere. Most people don't start as a GM.
No.
Unless you're me and the rest of your group just refuses to run games.
And I will say, there's two kinds of new players, and this isn't mentalities, this is where they come from. We got new to RPGs, and we got new to Savage Worlds.
Right.
and there are completely different routes you want to go to try and get them to try Savage Worlds.
Yeah.
I've actually found way more success in getting people who haven't played anything else.
Agreed.
I think it's because Savage Worlds offers settings that I'm not going to say no one else offers, like modern supernatural or anything, but no one else offers all these choices without it being a ton of crunch.
Yeah, most games are built around one setting.
Yes.
And then they spin off a couple other ones. Unless you're talking about like GURPS, but we're not talking about GURPS.
Well, that's why I said without it being a ton of crunch, because I know someone's going to go, GURPS does all of that. Depending on how many books you buy. Does it do all of it with one book?
Yeah.
Dude, I've done GURPS. I know its limits.
But all the big games really focus on one setting or maybe a couple settings in the same genre.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, not just that. Let's be real honest. 90% of the hobby is fantasy or science fantasy.
Right.
They can say it's sci-fi, but very little of it's hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
Now, there is great hard sci-fi. Traveler's hard sci-fi. Eclipse Phase is hard sci-fi. But here's the thing. Is Paizo doing it? Then about 90% of the industry is doing it in one way or another. And, like, my wife doesn't like either of those.
Yeah.
It's not her. It's funny because she tells me constantly, like, I don't like fantasy. I wouldn't play that, but she loves Harry Potter.
So urban fantasy.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, she loves ETU.
Yeah.
I have personally found, and in talking with a lot of people, especially when we got to do cons and stuff, ETU is the gateway setting.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who hear about that and they're just like, that sounds really cool.
Well, it's easier to grasp.
Yeah, and it has some very tangible comparisons, like, as well. So you can be like, do you like Buffy? Not too far off. Or
I'm not real big on Buffy. That was all about, like, they had the romance thing. All right, what about Supernatural?
Right.
I don't like either of them. We can make it more fun. You like Scooby-Doo?
Scooby-Doo, yeah.
I was going to say, you can push it.
Yeah.
You'd be like, not but Scooby-Doo.
Whereas
here's the thing. If someone goes, I don't like Scooby-Doo, you don't need to be friends with them.
I don't want to know that person.
If they go, so what, is Scrappy going to be in this? Then you can be buddies and be like, no, fuck Scrappy. But if they don't like Scooby-Doo, that's fine. Just disassociate with them.
Yeah.
I need to vet all my connections I still have in LA to get Matthew Lillard on to play ETU as Shaggy.
That would be awesome. He'd probably do it.
Yeah, you just got to get in touch with him, which is not easy.
Yeah. Well, he's on Deborah Ann Woll's show, right?
I think he was a special guest.
Was he just a guest on that? Okay.
Maybe a regular, but I think he's a special guest because he's busy running Butyl and Grimm.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he runs a D&D, like, third-party company. New players.
New players. They're great.
This is going to be a clusterfuck of a video.
It'll be fun. There's going to be enough good stuff that we can cut together some kind of Frankenstein monster video. But
it'll be self-aware and destroy us all.
Yeah. I mean, well, I've said this before. I think everybody is a little RPG curious.
Agreed.
I know a lot of people who are like, yeah, I like the idea of those kind of games, but I really think fantasy's dumb. And I don't want to play D&D. And I'm like, well, guess what, buddy? There's like, the Savage Worlds aside, there's dozens of other RPGs that are not fantasy.
Hundreds now.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if you remember this when there was the conversations with someone on Facebook that was like, when I made the post of this video would help getting non-gamers in to Savage Worlds and stuff. And some people want to go, well, you wouldn't get non-gamers. Here's the thing. And it's something I said there. So here's the thing about everyone's RPG curious. At their core, RPGs are just storytelling. Even if people don't think they're into RPGs and like the game side of it, it has been proven storytelling is a core piece of our psychology. It's part of what makes us human. Everyone, and I literally mean everyone, cares about storytelling in one way or another.
Right.
This is just a fact of psychology. If you can find how to get that and bring RPGs in, in an accessible way, and they realize, oh, this is the new way to do storytelling. Especially, and this isn't one of those like, oh, with technology these days, but culture has gotten so far into you're being told the stories, which is entertainment. We're an entertainment-based culture. It's
Right.
Fall of Rome and all that. People have kind of forgotten what it feels like to tell a story. Mm-hmm. And by forgotten, I mean there is a large chunk of the population that has probably never told a story. And once they do it, it is addicting. If it's done right and if it's done in a way that brings people in, makes them feel safe. Because one of the biggest things about storytelling, if they haven't done it before, is they're going into a new area where they're vulnerable. So it has to feel safe. And this isn't safe spaces, triggers, or anything like that. We're not touching that. If you want people to open up and experience new things, they have to feel safe. Right. And feel like they can try new things and not be ridiculed for it. Especially when, while, yeah, being a nerd's like become popular and it's in the zeitgeist and stuff, there's still the decades of ingrained social training of people are going to make fun of you for this.
Or growing up, these are the kids you made fun of at school.
Yeah.
Like, I find there's a lot of people who, I mean, and I'm not even saying that in like these are like terrible bully kind of people. It's just growing up, you were always told these were the weird kids.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be a weird kid, and now you're an adult and you're like, you know, some of those things those weird kids did seem interesting. But my one line I always use on new players, like new to RPG players, is like, I understand it's intimidating. I understand there's a lot to it, or you feel like you don't know what you're doing. But the one thing you don't have to, or you shouldn't ever have to worry about, is you don't have to worry about looking like a dork in front of all these other dorks. Because we're all here for the same thing. And if somebody at the table is going to give you a hard time for that, that's not somebody that's going to be at my table.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play with that person. Like, it's one thing, like, you crack jokes at each other every once in a while over, like, a funny character name or how, like, a silly interaction, but there's a difference between, like, making fun of somebody's character or something that happens in the game and making fun of the person.
There's no other way I know how to put this, but it's busting balls.
Yeah.
We'll bust balls. And we'll have fun if it's in good humor and everything. Now, granted, there have been discussions of, like, sometimes people say it's okay when it's not, and all that's part of the trust situation.
That's also any relationship doing any activity.
Yeah.
With any
people
other
do that everywhere.
Right.
So you're fine with that.
Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, it is starting to shift of like, oh, this person games and that person game.
Right. I think video games have helped with that a lot too in some ways.
Oh, I think so. I think the fact that you could say you're a gamer for the last 10 years and it didn't mean anything other than you might be a douchebag.
Yeah.
Helped because I think in all honesty, I think a lot of RPG gamers felt comfortable going, I'm a gamer, and kind of like just not defining how.
Leaving it there, yeah.
And that spread it out a little bit. And other people, if you've done video games, you can more comprehend the concept of like stats and numbers representing a person,
right?
Which means they were able to bleed people over, all of that stuff.
How many people who play video games, which, I mean, I feel like most people, at least in the last couple generations, like Gen Xers, our generation, and the youngest generation, I don't know what Gen Z is. They don't have a fun name yet. It'll probably be something real derogatory, but like video games for those three generations are a pretty standardized thing at this point.
It's just a medium.
Yeah, and there's not many people who don't play them in some fashion. And how many people haven't played Skyrim?
Yeah.
I'd say a pretty large number, and people who aren't traditionally like the nerdy gamer types too. So when I'm trying to explain this to somebody who doesn't have a lot of background in the hobby, I'm like, well, have you played a game like Skyrim? Or I'll use other games as examples too. But
yeah,
okay, well, it's kind of like that, but there's not a screen in front of you with graphics and bears that go flying off into the distance because of weird glitches, but they might you do something to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, I think Skyrim did a lot in the fact that Skyrim is D&D, the video game.
Yeah.
It is the closest representation we've had to actual D&D.
Sure.
It has its flaws. It has its limitations, and it honestly doesn't even have the best writing of the Elder Scrolls games.
It sure doesn't.
But it also has writing like right on par with like a high school D&D game.
Yeah.
You are the Dragonborn. You're going to quest and kill dragons and collect their souls.
Yeah.
But they will give you superpowers. I have played that game. I have ran that game.
Yeah.
Literally, I ran a campaign of D&D, and this wasn't in high school. This was in college. It wasn't you collect their souls to give you superpowers, but I quickly gave the party like a gypsy wagon. And their entire point of the campaign was to hunt down and kill dragons to take their hearts and incorporate them through magic item crafting into upgrading their wagon.
Nice. Dragon Wagon. Was that the name of the game? Because it should be.
It didn't have a name, but if it did, it would have been Dragon Wagon.
Yeah.
Which very quickly, because you've been in my games, devolved into things like they killed a white dragon, used its heart to make a kegerator.
Nice.
One of the first things they did was one of the first dragons they killed. They took its skull and mounted it on the front of the wagon and enchanted it so the wagon became an intelligent item that self-drove, and it was like the party mascot.
That's awesome.
They added enough enchantments to make it bigger on the inside, and it was like a tavern on the inside that they just hung out in when they were driving around.
It's pretty sweet. Now I want to like steal that concept for something.
I'll run that at some point again. I'll full on run that. That was fun.
I feel like that could be like a Savage World supplement.
It could. I will say I'm back on to working on a hex crawl supplement for Savage Worlds because I got some ideas that popped in my head.
So you feel like ETU is like your best gateway for Savage Worlds to get people in?
I would say I think there's a very short list of what works. Gauge them. If they like Skyrim, just play with the core book and make a fantasy world.
Right.
Real easy. Like, real easy. If they like Indiana Jones, core book.
Yeah.
Nazis all have D6s. You're done. Like, really.
Well, they have the, what's the adventure? The Eye of Kilcado.
Oh, yeah, there's...
giant crocodile god thing, and I think that's like an awesome like Indiana Jones pulp adventure.
It is. It is very Indiana Jones. The only thing I don't like about that one is you have to run the pre-mades.
Yeah.
Like, you can run without it, but you got to do a lot of heavy lifting of rewriting the adventure.
I've run it without pre-gens.
Well, it's written for the pre-gens. Yeah. Now, granted, that said, pre-gens are your friend.
Right.
For getting new players in.
One-shots are a great... So, we can talk about this a little more in a minute, but I think one-shots are a great way to get new players in and also a way to get new GMs in.
Yes.
Talk about that when we talk about GMing.
Eric, so we can cut this to a more concise.
Yeah.
Let's kind of go back and forth on if they like do this.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to end with, and if they don't like any of it, do ETU, because that's the honest answer.
Yeah.
So let's see. I mean, I guess we'll hit the cores first, like we said. So if they like Skyrim or fantasy, core book.
Right. If they're a big sci-fi fan, Last Parsec is great for just about any kind of sci-fi outside of like sci-fantasy like Star Wars. And even then, I love Last Parsec because it's so open and sandboxy, but that can be a little intimidating for some people, I know.
Yeah, I will say the one thing with Last Parsec is you need the sci-fi companion.
Yeah, well.
So it's not its own bug. Granted, do the sci-fi companion.
Right.
I will say, if you're willing to go like third party, if they like Power Rangers or Sailor Moon or any of that, Savage Tokukatsu.
Yeah.
That book is awesome.
Be great.
Also Godzilla. Indiana Jones, you can really do core book.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, you can do anything with the core book if you really want to.
Yeah.
I've actually, one of my favorite settings I've used to introduce new people is 50 Fathoms.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a fantasy setting, but it's also pirates.
Yes.
Who doesn't like pirates? terrible people, I guess.
This is true. And then if they like sci-fi, the sci-fi companion still works with SWADE.
Yeah.
Well
There's
enough.
little that changes.
Kind of covers everything. 50 Fathoms is great. I will say, in fact, if you want to go a little more into fantasy, grab Lankmar.
Yeah.
Because Lankmar will also be like, you can give them the list of the Grey Mouser books and be like, here's inspiration. Because for some players, that's going to help.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I was going to say, it can be beneficial to use like licensed settings. Flash Gordon or the Goon, like, you can show them a few comics or whatever and give them an idea what this is.
Yeah, I fully endorse using licensed properties, especially if it's at your own table. You can use whoever you want.
Well, right.
I've run Venture Brothers, and it was amazing. Basically, you go, what's your favorite TV show, movie, or book?
Mm-hmm.
And savage it. And honestly, go online and Google it. Someone probably already has.
Right.
Because so much of it's been done.
Yeah. I actually think, if you like Ninja Turtles, there's always sewer rats.
There is always sewer rats. There's also this really awesome video called Savage Ninja Turtles, where like this super cool GM ran a one-shot of sewer rats.
For a bunch of ingrates, probably.
Probably. Weird. I mean, I've heard he's also done Savage Jurassic Park. Well, he was in it. Savage Power Rangers, which is still one of my favorite of the one-shots.
Yeah.
That's just hilarious. But yeah, see what they like and make the game for them.
Yeah, you know what I think is another good like gateway setting when it's out, it's not out yet? Wise Guys.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a great gateway setting for people because, like you said, nobody really thinks of RPGs outside of fantasy and sci-fi to a lesser extent. So when you be like, oh yeah, you're just going to play a bunch of like mobsters in Las Vegas, I feel like that just catches people right there because they're like, wait, what?
I feel like ETU was the setting for people who like know they're kind of nerdy, but were like, fantasy and sci-fi aren't my thing.
Yeah.
And Wise Guys is going to be the setting for like all the guys. Girls can like it too, but let's be honest, Casino, Goodfellas, Reservoir Dogs, it has a very distinct fan base.
Yeah, well, especially like the more like dude bro-y kind of guys who are like, oh, I'm not enough of a nerd to play like some dorky elf archer. Instead, you get to play.
You want to play Sopranos, dude?
A dude who breaks people's knees with a baseball bat when they own money. How's that sound? And they're like,
well,
do that.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, no, man, just like I honestly believe Game of Thrones becoming as big as it was really got a lot of people going, all right, yeah, I guess I will check out D&D.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, fantasy can be cool. But even the people that are like, oh, I don't even do that Game of Thrones stuff. I don't do fantasy. I don't do any of that. Yo, dude, you remember Sopranos? Yeah, man, that was awesome. You want to play that?
Or GTA.
Yeah, dude, you want to play a Quentin Tarantino movie?
Yeah. Who hasn't played Grand Theft Auto?
Who has played Grand Theft Auto using Savage Worlds? It's because you were in that game.
Yeah, I'm really sad that never really saw the light of day.
All those videos, that was so much bad luck back to back.
Yeah, that was such
bad audio, corrupted video, bad audio, didn't record.
That's the story of our life.
Might have to do that again at some point.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to be hacking this to bits.
Yeah.
But one of the more important ones, getting new game masters. And I think this is one where I'm probably going to get a little preachy.
Yeah.
About some of the content. But first, say you got players. Say you're lucky enough you already have players. At what point do you feel like it's a good idea to try and get at least one of them to dip their toes into being a game master? For me, typically, you see the glint of it. Like, they're already real creative. They obviously have stories to tell. So what do you do to kind of nudge them into becoming a game master?
So I think one of the most helpful exercises that we've kind of taken on is So in our group, there's give or take 20 or so people that I have as players on one basis or another. Not regularly. Some of them are more casual, drop in every once in a while for a game, like a one-shot or something. Out of those players, me and Josh are the two game masters. So every time we end a campaign or end a season of a campaign, if we're doing it that way, all the players at the table who are playing have to run a one-shot before the next game starts.
Nice.
And it's just a one-shot. It doesn't even have to be Savage Worlds. It can be whatever system you want. It can be whatever story you want. And I think that is such a good way just to get people's toes wet. I truly believe that everybody should try and run a game at least once or twice. Because even if you feel like you're not good at it or you don't like it or whatever your reason to not continue doing it, I think you get a good perspective of what goes into it after that. And I think that's really important for players too, because everybody has those players who are a little more argumentative at the table or a little less appreciative at times at the table. I'm not saying like bow down before me. I work my ass off for all of you, but there's a lot of prep that goes into some of my games. And depending on the session, there are some sessions that are right off, like I just off the top of my head, very little prep, and there are other ones where I sit down and I'm like writing and researching and typing stuff up for hours at a time. So I really have liked the make everyone do a one-shot thing. It's gotten to the point where there is at least one player in the group who's done it twice now, and she hates it. Some things aren't for everyone. Not everyone's going to like everything. And if you have a player who finds that they really hate GMing, why are you going to force someone to do something they don't like?
Yeah, if they've tried it twice, which means if you've tried it once and you hate it, it might have just been a bad session.
Right.
If you try it twice and you hate it, I agree. I'd be like, you don't need to GM on our off time anymore. You've tried it.
You've tried it. And if you ever want to in the future, so I think it's really a good way to do it. Different people run games differently than I do. I have campaigns that run for years, and I've run campaigns that have run a few months. I know some people who are like 6 sessions, that's a campaign. And I'm like, that's not what I would personally define as a campaign, but if that's what works for you and your table, that's great. And in those kind of situations, I feel like if you're running like a 6-session game, you don't have every player then want to run a one-shot unless you're trying to buy time. But I don't know. I think it's a really good tool and a really good way to get people's feet wet. And
no, I think it's a great tool for between. Like my thing was gonna be like support one-shots.
Right.
Do the one session, because granted, one of the hardest things GMing isn't in the book. It's how to own the decisions you made at the table week in, week out as they build and they compound, and the craziness of the players keeps veering things in directions and constantly going with it. But with a one-shot, you get to say yes more.
Yeah.
Typically, players tend to be a lot more okay with you going, this is the specific game we're running.
I've also done things where most of the time, if it's not a one-shot, but it's like I have run games that are 4 or 5 session games, just like small modules that I know I can't wrap up in one shot, but I'll do like semi pre-made characters where I'll be like, okay, well, I assigned 12 of your 15 skill points, probably not even that many, it would probably be 10 of your 15 skill points, and picked one of your 2 edges. But again, it depends on how experienced your players are too.
Exactly.
If you're a player who's never played Savage Worlds before, character creation is going to take a whole night.
Oh, yeah. I definitely say pre-mates for new characters.
Yeah, I think a really good piece of advice I got a while back. So actually, I was talking to a guy at PAX Unplugged. I think it was the guy who did the Monster of the Week adventure that I play tested that's in the new book now. But he was talking about how it's been a really important like design decision for like him and other people who work on like Powered by the Apocalypse games. A lot of them are, this is your character, like using Monster of the Week as an example. You have your whatever, your powers or abilities, whatever they're called. And it's, you pick 3 of these. It's not, here's a list of 50 things, pick 3 of them. It's there are 8 options, which makes it such a good con game or a good like pickup game because somebody can grab the sheet and be like, okay, I can choose between these 6 things. Makes my life a lot easier than if it has to be open-ended, if I have to describe everything about my character and everything they can do. So I a lot of times, twice maybe, in those shorter, like 4 or 5 session games, build out half a pre-gen, and then it's like, okay, well, I've envisioned this character being like a combat character, but you can have a D8 in shooting and a D4 in fighting, or a D8 in fighting and a D4 in shooting.
Yeah.
And, like, basically, here's where we're going to put the points. You tell me. And it gives them, I feel like giving somebody a little bit of say over their character does give them more investment, too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially new players.
If there's anything I miss most from Deluxe Edition, it's the archetypes.
Yeah.
Because then they started selling the setting archetypes, which were completely different. They're pre-gens. The archetypes were half-made characters. Right. And the fact of, all right, spend 5 minutes, add just the finishing touches on the character, now it's your character, made all the difference. Just like, again, we've been saying do a pre-made for new players, but also probably the day or maybe even the week before, ask that player, hey, what kind of character do you want to be?
Right.
And then make that character for them.
Right.
The big thing there isn't telling them who to play or how to play. It's having them skip character gen because they're new, and that eats up time and mental bandwidth.
Yeah.
It's not a control thing.
I can't tell you how many times I've spent like making up like 8 pre-gen characters for like a table of 4 people to make sure there are options. And the 4 coolest that I thought were the coolest just sit there.
Don't get picked. Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely say if you have a table of people, and this is actually a great advice for like con games, make more characters than you have players.
Yeah.
This does 2 things. It lets them pick. Even just picking from the list is going to give them feel like they have more agency than here's the character you must play.
Right.
It forces you to design an adventure that doesn't make a character mandatory for the adventure to continue.
Right.
Because here's the thing. Even if you designed a exact number for your seats at like a con, if one person doesn't show up, now your adventure's screwed.
Or what if one person brings a friend?
Yeah.
There was a seat at the table. Like, I mean, yeah, we could fit him in, but
they don't have a character. Yeah, make extras. I made 2 extra characters when I was running Hellgate.
Yeah. I mean, it also just sucks to get stuck with a character you don't like, and I've had that happen once or twice where, like at con games mostly, where, okay, there are 5 players at the table, there are 5 character choices, and I know that, like, other people feel really strongly about wanting to play these other characters, and it's like, well, do I want to fight a stranger for this character, or do I want to just take what's left? And then I look at what's left, and I'm like, this character is dreadfully boring. I wouldn't have picked this. I would have picked any other character before them, but nobody else wanted to play them either, so you get stuck. And
now, before we go on to the second part of the new GM, I figured we should cover the basics. This is stuff that's said everywhere, so I don't think we need to have a big, long discussion about this. If you're not the new GM, because I think we can cover if you're the new GM, hey, we're talking to you. But first, this is the assumption. You're a GM, you're trying to get one of your players to GM. Be supportive.
Right.
Especially if you're the GM, typically, and you got one of your friends to GM, make the character that will jump on the quest hook.
Mm-hmm.
Whether your group knows it or not, they're used to following your lead anyways.
Right.
Be the one that stays on track. Granted, the player should be like saying yes, or the GM should be saying yes to the players and blah, 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 blah. Make that easier for them.
Right.
Be the one that pick up where the story's going and try and help herd the other players and do all of that. Basically, be a fan of the GM.
I think that's important at any table, but especially with a new GM.
Yeah.
I think players need to be a fan of the game, but I think the GM needs to be a fan of the players too. I think what you said is a great suggestion. I've even, when I'm getting people, like new people, to do like a one-shot or something, I've told them, I'm like, if you want to just take this and run with it and do what you want to do, that's fine. If you want to come to me and like run some adventure ideas around, bounce some stuff around, maybe give me a little bit of an idea so I can help you at the table if you're not confident. But that's the other thing. I think it's a fine line between trying to be helpful and then trying to step on their toes and take over as GM too. And I know that's something that sometimes at the table I've had a hard time with in the past, especially when somebody's GMing a game and like kind of lagging.
I was going to say, we'll just say, and it's not going well.
Right. That I'll try and be like, okay, well, why don't we do this? And I'm like, well, it's their game. I want to be helpful. Yeah. I don't want to be forceful. You know what I mean?
And that is difficult.
Yeah.
That could have a whole episode dedicated to like how to handle that. But no, I definitely agree. Definitely leave yourself open to be like, hey, you have any ideas? Feel free to bounce it off of me. Right. Let them know I won't use this at the table. And don't use that information at the table. That's a dick move. You're a GM. You're already parsing all your different NPC knowledge. I do expect experienced GMs to know how to parse out personal knowledge and player knowledge.
Right.
I don't expect all players to be able to do it yet, but if you're running games and you've been, I expect you to be able to.
Yeah.
Now, again, before we hit the other type of GM, new GM, this is to the new GMs. We're going to have to trim a lot of fat, but there are a million videos out there for you already, but I'm going to hit the basics. You don't need to get all the rules right. You just don't. If you screw something up, roll with it.
Keep moving.
Try it. Try and be positive. The best thing about if you're running a one-shot is you can say yes to your players even more, because if they break the game, they only broke it for a session.
Yeah.
So feel free to say yes, because here's the other thing. If you say yes to them, they're going to love you.
Yeah, and you'll probably have a really good story later.
Exactly. And that's really everything you need to know. Like, you're not going to get everything right. Just know that. You're not.
I mean,
no one will.
We've GM'd how many games and still make mistakes sometimes with rulings and stuff like that. There's a lot of moving pieces. Sometimes things get lost, but as long as everyone's having fun and nobody's getting screwed over, who cares?
Now we're going to get into the other type of new GM. And this is the type of new GM I don't think I see anyone ever talk about in videos. You and I have talked about it. Mm-hmm. The GM who didn't come from another game. The one who doesn't have an experienced GM to help them. Mm-hmm. The one who's heard about role-playing games, got interested in it, and now has to wrangle their friends. And they're the ones that have to start the game.
Yeah.
So we're gonna discuss this a bit, trying not to get too ranty.
I was that GM.
So. I was that GM.
Yeah.
I wasn't that GM in D&D,
yeah,
but I was that GM for a lot of other stuff.
So, yeah, my experience was basically... Okay, so I played D&D very early, like AD&D, with my dad when I was a little kid. And then got away from it a little bit, and then I had friends who were like, yeah, I always wanted to play D&D or whatever game, and a friend of mine had the Pathfinder book. First edition Pathfinder, obviously, not new Pathfinder. I don't know if
the second edition's not even out yet.
Is it not out yet?
I don't think it's out yet. It's still in playtest.
Okay.
It's getting ready to come out.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to it.
I could be completely wrong, but...
Granted, I had a pretty decent knowledge of third edition, which is not too far off from Pathfinder. But that was the game people wanted to play. And I was like, okay, you guys want to play this? I'm going to figure out how to do it. But I'd never run a game before. I'd never played a game with an experienced GM before. And, I mean, it went pretty well, ultimately. I had some fun stories about people beating up innocents and causing riots and all sorts of fun stuff. But I could talk about that for a while. That's more bad player decisions than anything.
Well, here's the big thing I want to bring up. Yeah. Because it's not brought up about it. You'll see a good bit of people who are finally coming to understanding we need new players. It's the only way to grow the hobby.
Right.
These GMs we're talking about, the ones who don't already have an experienced GM to just teach them. First and foremost, before I get into this, if your response to things is just have a GM teach you, leave. You're not helping.
Yeah.
These are people who aren't fortunate enough to have a community around them yet, or they don't know who's in the community, or don't know where the community is for them locally.
They're trying to
finding that is hard and scary.
Yeah.
But you get one new player into your group, you grew the community by 1. You get one new GM into your group, you grew the community by at least 5. If they have 4 players. I mean, maybe 4. But you have them plus all their players.
Yeah.
Plus, there is now a local GM for if other people are looking for a GM in that area.
Right.
They are the single most important people we need to bring in. Still care about people who are in the communities and all. They're the ones who are fortunate. But that kid who's like 14 who found out about Savage Worlds because he saw a YouTube video and wants to try it and he doesn't know where to look and is going to ask the really dumb questions and doesn't have someone personally to teach him even the basics, he or she is the one that will grow the hobby more than any of us. And I feel like the online community has forgotten that. I feel like a lot of the community, as we just said, really takes for granted the fact that they have other people who play in their area.
Right. Well, I think in some ways it's easy to forget that when you're part of such a big community because we have the community. You go on the Savage Worlds Facebook page, there's how many thousands of people on that page?
5,000 roughly.
Yeah. So you can talk to those people. People just getting into the hobby, they don't necessarily know about that kind of stuff. They don't, and even if they do, it's an intimidating thing to jump into. It's a pretty insular, tight-knit community, and you're this new kid just learning how to do this. You don't have anyone around to teach you, and you're like, hey, I want to learn to play Savage Worlds. How do I do that? And they're like, well, get someone to teach you. He's like, well, I don't. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking for somebody to teach me. I don't have somebody sitting next to me who can do that.
Yeah, and there's also stuff like we're real lucky that the Savage Worlds community is actually one of the more open and
absolutely
communities. But even then, they don't know that.
Yeah.
Till they go in and hopefully don't hit the 5% that isn't.
Right.
Just because we're the most just means it's not a cesspool.
Right.
That's all it means, everybody.
And let's be honest.
What if they thought the first place to go check was Reddit?
Right.
And this isn't screw Savage Worlds Reddit people. I'm not big in the Savage Worlds community in Reddit, but Reddit in general is pretty damn toxic.
Yeah, the Savage Worlds Reddit's not too bad.
Well, it's the Savage World, so it's already less toxic, typically.
Right. But then again, looking at it from another point of view, what are the odds that kid is starting with Savage Worlds too?
Yeah.
Jump into the Pathfinder community.
Oh, God.
Ask them for help. Not that there aren't good people who play Pathfinder. There are plenty of them, I assume. Yeah. Some of them are good people.
I assume there must be, just given the numbers.
Yeah.
No, but, and this is the thing. I do want to try and keep it on Savage Worlds just because the podcast.
No, I know.
And all this stuff. And yes, we are trying to fund a YouTube series. And yes, this directly connects to it. This isn't because we're looking to make money for this. We ain't going to turn a profit on this. I'm losing money already on this. And I'm okay with that. But if somebody wants to find or wants to play an RPG, guess what? The fact that it's in a book on Drive-Thru-RPG is way too saturated of a market.
Yeah.
The fact that, we have a Facebook group and we have Discords, they have to know to look for those, and they already have to know it's there. Video tutorial content, I 100% believe, is what's going to get us even close to being one of the mainstream games. And Savage Worlds is pretty close up there in the places where you know to look. But it's also not in a lot of game shops.
Right.
A lot of distributors don't carry it. Or they do, but the game shops don't know to ask for it, which was a shop I had an issue with.
The shop that we do Savage Sundays at doesn't actually carry any Savage Worlds products. Which, once SWADE comes out, I'm going to push them real hard to... I get you don't want to buy up new stuff right now with the edition changing over.
But with the new edition out, you'll want to.
I'm going to make them buy it in.
But then there's also the fact of when you're talking about the kid who's alone, who doesn't have someone to teach themselves.
Yeah.
They don't typically look to Facebook and stuff first anymore. they're going to look to YouTube. They're going to look for how to learn this, how to learn that. And it's one of those why I've been pushing why this channel exists at all is you go on Facebook, and this isn't saying specific content sucks, but go on Facebook right now and you're going to find a handful of things for teaching Savage Worlds.
Yeah.
You're going to find reviews. There is one Savage Worlds review that's actually really good because it teaches the basics. It's about a 45-minute video. I'm blanking on who made it. I'm going to try and put a link in the description because it was my go-to for like showing people what Savage Worlds is. But that's a 45-minute video, and it only teaches the bare minimum. There's a bunch of these kind of podcasts, which I know this isn't doing anything to help that growth. This is for all you guys who already know Savage Worlds is awesome. Where even then, most of them talk about, oh, let's discuss our ideas on this. That's not educational. People who already know it might learn something new, but from someone without any knowledge, they're not going to get much from it.
Yeah.
And then I have had some people bring up the Digital Dungeon Master, and that dude, he's a great guy. He has a couple on like how to make a character and the basics, but even then, each one's an hour plus long, and they only cover like kind of one or two mechanics each.
Right.
They're not concise, and people see those videos. They're not new people aren't going to watch them. Everybody thinks D&D exploded because of Critical Role. Critical Role got people searching. D&D exploded because there's about 1,000 channels that are making 10-minute tutorial videos.
Yeah. And Savage Worlds has
Us.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
And I deleted most of ours because they were really bad and on an edition that they won't find now. Honestly, if the Kickstarter fails, I'm going to make the videos anyways. They just won't be as good.
Yeah,
It'll take longer to come out.
Yeah.
It's going to get made either way. I also want that to be out there because I can totally get a cynical person going, oh, they're just making this episode to try and get us to give them money. I'm going to make this stuff anyways. I want people to understand why it's important. And if you care about the Savage Worlds hobby and growing, and even the RPG hobby, it's hugely important. All right, I wanted to not rant. That came off a little ranty, I think.
That wasn't too bad. You've had worse.
Oh, I know I have.
Like you said, they're going to happen either way, but having a professional level production, that means a lot to a lot of people. And maybe some of like the more hardcore players think that that's shallow or whatever, but if somebody clicks on a video, for the sake of argument, say somebody's trying to learn Savage Worlds versus D&D, and they just came off a professionally produced D&D video and come over to one of ours, and they're like, this video quality is not as high, it doesn't look as good, blah, 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 whatever. Maybe D&D is the better game.
Polish does make people think it's a better product. Whether or not that's true, it doesn't matter.
Right.
There's also this thing, I love the fact that Savage Worlds isn't class-based.
Yeah.
But when it comes to education, it's an uphill battle. One of the big reasons D&D does so well is someone goes, all right, my buddy talked me into, I'm going to play D&D. I already know I'm going to play, say, the Warlock.
Right.
All they have to do is pull up a how to play the Warlock video, and it'll give them everything they need in 10 minutes for all the rules they'll need to know.
Yeah.
We can't do that with Savage Worlds. For good reason. And I love those reasons, but even then, it's a 45-minute video right now for even the basic world rules, or a 10-minute video that teaches me everything I need to know because I don't need to learn all the other classes.
Right.
It's a tough sell.
Although it might be a fun video series at some point.
I actually plan on doing how to play and doing like archetypes and roles and how to do them in Savage Worlds.
Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of myself because we got 15 plus videos to produce.
Right.